At the time of recording, this is halftime of a game between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys. And Ezekiel, he had a fumble right in the end zone that gave Philadelphia the ball when the Dallas Cowboys were in a very advantageous position. And Zeke has not had a great year for the Cowboys whatsoever. He was a healthy scratch the last game for discipline issues, according to the coach. And in general, over the last 3 years, he has not managed to record over 4 yards a carry or even hitting that 4 mark. And so really this is kind of the downward trajectory of his career. And at the end of the day, the fact that he's still in the league at 29 is a testament to his talent and what he once was, because so often running backs are out of the league at this point in their careers. Derrick Henry's kind of an exception. He's 30. He's still doing great over in Baltimore, but that is so much more of the exception than the rule. But for Ezekiel Elliott specifically, typically social media doesn't always necessarily reflect the full public opinion, but I've seen it in other circles as well. It's just kind of the idea that Ezekiel Elliott at this point in his career is washed and it's time for him to retire. And that, I don't want to talk about specifically, give my opinion necessarily on whether Ezekiel Elliott should retire. That's not my place, right, to make that decision ultimately. It was the same way with Tua, all the concussion issues. Should he retire? That's not my decision to make ultimately. However, what I will say with Ezekiel Elliott, an athlete like him who had great heights with the Dallas Cowboys, is that it can be hard for someone, really any athlete, to go and retire, because at the end of the day, this is your life's work. You spend your whole life training, playing high school football, playing high school basketball, going to college, doing the same thing. And you've worked your whole life to get this point, to play in a professional league and play the game that you love for a living, to build generational wealth. And it can be super hard to step away from that. And I think the psychology of players and how they perceive that and how they perceive when it's time to stop, that is why sometimes they just can't quite retire. And I think also that might be a reason why Ezekiel Elliott went back to Dallas, is that there is that sentimental value, because this is the team where back in the day, him and a young Dak Prescott, both in the young primes of their careers, truthfully, they didn't have much playoff success, sure, but they had a lot of fun in the regular season. And that Dallas Cowboys offense was pretty good and bare minimum fun to watch back in the day. And so for him to go back to Dallas, it can kind of bring back those memories of when things were better and when he was one of the best running backs in the entire league, if not the best. And so, this, while football in its entirety has been his life's work, the best of his work really came in Dallas. So for him to go back there, I think that could ultimately be the place for him to retire, because this is a place that he just has so much sentimental value to. And it's going to be hard for him to retire, just psychology of it. Imagine you spend your whole life doing something. Let's say for me, right? I become a wash podcaster. I'll work on this every day for 20 years. And at some point, I just can't. My voice has given out. I can't come up with any rational thoughts anymore. I've gone crazy. I've lost it talking about sports so often. But I can't back away, because this is what I've spent every single year since 17 doing, right? It would be hard for me to walk away. And coming from Oklahoma, I've been around a lot of cowboys. My father especially, he is one. So I come from a rodeo family. And my grandfather, he is just now really finally stopping. And physically he has declined, but he's holding up pretty well for someone in his 80s. And so for him to, finally step away from rodeoing, something that he's done all his life, it's really difficult, because at the end of the day, we find value in the stuff that we believe is most meaningful to us and what we've spent a lot of our time doing. And so for a football player like Ezekiel Elliott, he finds value in his performance on the field. So he doesn't feel any better either about the way that he's been playing the last couple of years. And it's going to be hard for him to step away from the game, because he believes that he has something more to prove, that he believes he still can be the Ezekiel Elliott he once was. And at the end of the day, he's going to try to prove that. He's got a chip on his shoulder, and maybe physically he isn't able to achieve that chip on his shoulder anymore, not able to knock it off. But he's going to try, and that's just the psychology of it. You spend your whole life getting to this point, you make it to the NFL. That's a dream. You want to build generational wealth for your family, and you want to stick around as long as you can, extend your career, and enjoy it while it's still here. So for the psychology of it, I can understand completely why Ezekiel Elliott is still in the league. And I think the cries for him to retire, while it's understandable due to his declining play, it's ultimately the decision of Ezekiel Elliott and when he feels the time is right. And I feel like that could be at the end of this year, just with it being in Dallas. That's where he started his career, and that would be very fitting for to where he was in his career, just, the sentimental value once again. But I think the psychology of it, it's going to make him hard to retire because he wants to get back to the level that he once was at. Because, hey, especially at the running back position, if you oversimplify it, it's just getting the ball and running with it. And Ezekiel Elliott still believes that he can do that at a high level. And that's why he hasn't retired yet. He wants to prove that he's still got it, whether he does or not. And ultimately there's going to come a day where he does have to retire. But with the psychology of it, I think that makes it easy to understand why he is still in the league today, despite what we see as his declining performance.